Good morning and welcome. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I live and work within the traditional territories of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation and the Tan-Kwachon Council. For those of you who I haven't met yet, I am Brianne Warner, the new Executive Director of the Yukon Chamber of Mines. And I'd like to welcome you to the Yukon Chamber of Mines Geoscience Speaker Series. Now, most of you have known the decision to cancel this year's 2021 Geoscience was a difficult one and not taken lightly, as it financially hurt the Chamber. Months of planning and prep have been slow to unravel, and we truly appreciate all the support our members have given us, both in financial contributions and donations of their time. The last two seasons have been operationally challenging for all of us, which is why celebrating our project successes is so important. It is extremely important to the Chamber to ensure we continue to offer opportunities for industry to network and communicate their achievements and attract investments to our territory. If there is enough interest, we look at continuing to offer this type of series in the future. I'd also like to mention that we do have a silent auction currently running. Northern Safety Network Yukon, along with the Yukon Chamber of Mines and Yukon Reed Society, are once again working together to organize the fundraising auction to raise money for the Yukon Imagination Library and the Yukon Mines Legacy Foundation. Now, normally the silent auction takes place at the Geoscience Awards banquet, and this year the auction will all be online. All proceeds of the silent auction will go to the Yukon Imagination Library and the Yukon Mines Legacy Foundation. If you're having any technical difficulties at all, please contact events@csrmanagement.ca. And at the end of this session, we're offering a Q&A with our speakers. If you have any questions at all, please type them into the chat and the moderator will read out your questions and they will be answered. Now, in closing, I'd like to give special thanks to our partners, Yukon Government and BMC Minerals, as well as our gold sponsors, Air North, Alcan Airline, Archer Cathro, Cobalt Construction, Hummingbird Mobile Health, JDS, Newmont, NVD, Pelly Construction, Summit Camps, Invest Yukon, and our silver sponsors, Metallic Group, SGS, Smalls Expediting, Sodexo, Northwest Tel, Tetra Tech, and Whitehorse Gold Corp. Now, we have many other sponsors, which I will be acknowledging at the end of the session as well. And with that, I would like to introduce you to our moderator for this session, Warwick Bullen. Excuse me. And with that, I will hand the mic over to you, Warwick.
Thank you, Brianne. Okay, so welcome everybody to the third session covering critical minerals in Yukon. Critical minerals, as you know, are vital ingredients in various industries like defense, telecoms, and so on, and particularly clean technologies like batteries and solar power and wind turbines and so on. So I'm Warwick from Geological Survey. I'll be moderating the session. We've got four talks today, three of which are project specific and which cover one or a number of critical minerals, and then we've got a more general talk which looks at critical minerals in the Yukon generally. So we're going to start off with Robin Black, VPX for BMC Minerals, and he's going to take us through Kudzakaya, what's happening there, where they currently stand, and how things are looking for them going forward. Okay, Robin, that's over to you.
Thanks all for signing in and joining us today online. Share everyone's sadness that we can't be doing this in person again this year, but here's looking forward to next year. So I'm going to give you guys a bit of an update on the Kudzakaya project in specific reference to critical minerals, keeping in with the theme of the session. As we all know, there'll be forward-looking statements here in my presentation. Most of these are based on our updated feasibility study of 2020, which is available on CDAR, contains all the details that you might want to look at for our project. So for those that don't know us, quickly, who is BMC? We are a strategic alliance between an experienced international management team and a respected UK resource fund. We're formed to take advantage of opportunities in the metals and mining sector It's a team of experienced mine developers and operators. We have offices in Perth, Western Australia, London, Vancouver, Whitehorse, and a couple regional offices in Ross River and Watson Lake. And of course, the principal project is Kudskaya, about 120 kilometers southeast of Ross. So yeah, so the executives based in Western Australia, Scott Donaldson's the fella in the middle there, and Neil Martin, those are the two principals. Ourselves as managers based in North America, myself, VP Exploration, Kelly Berg, VP Environment and Permitting, Joel Ray, who will be the Kudskaya General Manager, a ton of experience operating mines globally. Alan Nixon, who's based in Whitehorse, who many of you probably know and are familiar with. He's our VP External Affairs, and Gerbrand van Herden is our CFO with lots of experience in base metal mining operations, also globally. So the project, as I mentioned, it is in the traditional territory of the Kaska First Nations. We are about 120 kilometers southeast of Ross River, about 200 kilometers northwest of Watson Lake. There's a 24-kilometer access road that came with the property and is in great shape. So it provides year-round access if we want it. And then, of course, the Robert Campbell Highway with access down to the Port of Stewart. Why? So the team was formed about 2 years before I came on board in 2015. So they spent 18 months or so looking around the world for projects that met the criteria. And what, loosely, what are those criteria? Well, a welcoming community, knowledgeable about mining, of course, the right geology with regional exploration potential, checks that box quite well. Great infrastructure, highways, as I mentioned, an access road, airstrips, and then ports, as well as light industry in the territory. So all those things check the boxes. A low sovereign risk in Canada with a clear permitting regime. And probably as an added bonus, there is a permitting history at KZK. It was permitted to build and operate under Cominco in 1998. And so it was obviously never built, but with that comes about 20 years of environmental baseline studies, which we've expanded on during our time of operation. Also a favorable climate and topography for mining, and substantial technical and economic work already completed on the project. So what is the project? So in summary, again, if you do want further detail, the DFS is available on CDAR, but it's proposed high-grade zinc, silver, gold mine with copper and lead credits. It's focused on the ABM deposit at the proposed Kudskaya mine. The mine was permitted, as I mentioned, in '98. We've got a similar plan, of course, but we've modernized it a little bit to remove subaqueous tailing storage and put that into a dry stack tails facility, and including progressive reclamation. So doing the reclamation as the mine is in operation rather than waiting till the end. And notably, inclusion of about a $25 million water treatment plant to ensure that any water that comes in contact with the site is adequately treated. It is a conventional open pit and underground mine, producing 3 concentrates: a copper concentrate, a zinc concentrate, and a high precious metals concentrate that are all planned to be shipped out of the Port of Stewart. Our project proposal / EA was submitted to YCM Executive Committee in March 2017. And if you want, again, further information, I believe we have a virtual booth, and this information is available on CDAR. So in keeping with the theme of the session, our critical minerals, you can see Canada's nice 2021 list there in the maple leaf graphic. There's 31 of them. And according to their literature, they are critical for the sustainable economic success of Canada, essential to Canada's economic security, required for Canada's transition to a low carbon economy, and a sustainable source of critical minerals for our partners. Kudskaya will produce 2 of these listed critical minerals, copper and zinc, but in most abundance zinc. So in terms of Canada's production of these minerals, and I've included the other 3 that will be produced at KZK. All but copper and gold have been in steady decline over the years, quite significant decline for zinc and silver. And there are not a lot of mines near production or near construction. And I've included silver as well, because although it's not on the critical list, it is an important product for new technology, medicine, and emerging green economies. KZK, you can see our proposed production numbers at the bottom there for a steady state, looking at just over 100,000 tons of zinc and over 220,000 kilograms of silver annually. It's a significant amount of production in terms of the Canadian context. KZK would increase our current production. Sorry, I shouldn't say current. These are 2020 numbers. The 2021 numbers aren't available, and these numbers come from NRCan and StatsCan with a couple of years, 2019, 2020, provided by Sprott Capital Partners, as some of those numbers are still confidential with NRCan. So the zinc production would be an increase of 43% and silver 90%, which would equate to about 30% of total zinc production once KZK is in production. And similarly for silver, once KZK is in production, it would account for 47% of Canada's silver production. In terms of Yukon, it would propel Yukon into the primary zinc and silver producer in the country. Some historically prolific districts, obviously New Brunswick and Manitoba. Some of their projects are starting to ramp down, and this would come at a time, KZK would come at a time as these are ramping down, and like I said, propel Yukon into a leading producer in Canada for zinc and silver. So you see the silver quite significantly higher than most, and my apologies to Alexico, your numbers are not included in these 2020 numbers, but also a significant player in the Yukon story. So what does that mean for the territory in terms of raw numbers? These numbers, we had EY do a financial analysis and modeling based on the definitive feasibility study. It looks like 273 million direct taxes to Canada, 219 million to Yukon, an additional 259 million in royalties. So it's total $750,000 in direct taxes and royalties. We have ongoing discussions with Casca First Nations on the amount of payments, but it's greater than 100 million as a starting point. An average about 400 full-time equivalent jobs, and a full mine life of about 25 years from construction to final closure at the current reserve base. So obviously we look to increase that reserve base as the mine goes into operation, and I'm confident that we will. It's a very prospective project. In terms of revenue split, I mean, these numbers are probably a little dated now, but that's the general split you might see is predominantly silver and zinc, probably trading back and forth as the metal prices fluctuate. Beyond just the monetary benefits to Yukon, we feel that mining results in significant infrastructure improvements, obviously jobs, taxes as we went over, royalties, education and training, which is a big part of our corporate philosophy, and of course many others, and I'll touch on that in the coming slides, as well as community environmental programs. So conducting wildlife surveys and just generally collecting baseline data and supporting science in the project area is a significant part of our operations as well. And of course, we hope to leave a positive legacy for Yukon in the area. When we were in full-blown exploration mode, we were really focused on keeping as much of the work and expenditures in the territory. So between 2016 and 2020, when we were actively, we've been doing some work up there in the last couple of years, but a lot of it is road maintenance and a few small exploration programs here and there. But approximately 70% of our suppliers and major contracts were businesses or corps associated with Casca and other First Nations corporations that's either in JVs, direct members, or our businesses, Casca businesses. As I mentioned, training is a big part of our philosophy. We want to train people to get them in a position to be managing the mine now, not when the mine starts. So from 2016 and ongoing, we've been offering a CASCA scholarship. It supports secondary, post-secondary education. To date, we've distributed over 150 individual scholarships, and that accounts for about $178,000. We also implement an employee mentoring program to keep people on site, to help prepare people for the job coming to site, and keeping them engaged. And what that looks like is a community elders, community members coming up to site and being a conduit for employees to voice concerns or any other issues that they may have that get passed up the chain to managers. We also are implementing local partnerships with Yukon College and other training organizations in Yukon, and cultural awareness is a huge part of our corporate philosophy. So everybody that comes to site is obligated to undertake a cultural awareness training program. In terms of community initiatives and supporting the broader community, we do support the local food banks in Watson Lake and Whitehorse. We've donated to the 2021 Yukon flood relief, also providing pandemic PPE for local communities, and a few other programs there. So while we haven't had large exploration and activities up on site in the last couple of years, we are still trying to maintain our presence and place in the community, and maintaining that community partnership that we value so much. So where does this put us in terms of permitting and getting to the brass tacks of developing the mine? Well, as I mentioned, 2017, we submitted our EA. The final screening report has been issued to the decision bodies last spring. The project was recommended to proceed, and we're awaiting a decision document, which we anticipate will be the first half of this year. That'll allow us to proceed to permitting. So in the permitting pipeline, we'll be looking at getting a Type B water license to start for initial construction. While that's, sorry, not initial construction, but it allows us to put in the exploration camp that we're currently permitted for. And then a Type A municipal license for the mine camp. We'll also need a Type A water license and a quartz mining license. We don't have any dates assigned to these specifically, as they're all, there's some contingencies and some interdependence that make the timing a little more complex. And here's a good example of that. So as I mentioned, our YCM assessment is completed. We're waiting that decision document. We can then move on to applying for the quartz mining license. We anticipate that's about a 12 to 24 month process, as well as a Type A water license, which would be another 12 to 18 month process. Once those are granted, we'll make a decision to construct, and the construction period would be a further 18 to 24 months beyond that. So in summary, the company has an experienced management team, both with mine development and in the region. We try and foster strong community relationships and really value creating a place for ourselves in the community and partnerships. A key focus is First Nation participation and local employment. We are proposing a modern mine with a 25-year mine life to start. It's a polymetallic project, so there's a natural hedge against fluctuating metal prices. Commonly, as base metals prices go up, precious metals might go down, and vice versa. So there's quite a good hedge there. It is, as I illustrated, will be a significant contributor to the critical mineral production in Canada, and quite significant for Yukon. in terms of the national picture. And the project will provide significant economic benefits to Yukoners and local communities. And we're now looking to start construction subject to the permitting and issuance of the decision document. So thanks for your time today. If there's any questions, I'm always available for a chat or anything else. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with myself, and there's a few other contacts there of key personnel in the organization.
Thank you very much, Robin, for that most informative talk. And clearly, Kutukai is going to become a major player in Yukon's economy going forward, and that's really good to see. So thank you very much for that. Next up is Laura Lewis from the Yukon Geological Survey, and she's going to be giving us an overview generally of critical minerals in Yukon. And there's also a publication which Laura can remind us of when she's an open file publication when she's giving her presentation. People can go and grab it and download. Okay, Laura, thanks very much, and over to you.
Thanks. I was going to say thank you, Warwick, but that's an inside joke that only a few people are going to get. All right, I'm just going to share my screen here. All right, hello, everybody. Welcome to this speaker series. My name is Laura Lewis. I'm an economic geologist with the Yukon Geological Survey, at least for another 6 months. And then who knows, greener pastures or darker, grayer pastures, I don't know. But I'm moving on. All right. So you've probably heard the term critical minerals, or you might have heard some variation of that, critical metals, critical raw materials, or subsets, strategic metals. So what, I'm going to turn this, sorry, I need to minimize this. So what are they? The critical minerals, this is a term that the US government and the Canadian government have landed on. Critical minerals are materials important for the trade, economy, and defense of a nation. And very importantly, they're vulnerable to supply disruptions. For whatever reason, they're sourced in the Congo or China, or, you know, there just isn't enough in the world to supply our needs. There's various different countries that have different lists. So the list is going to be different for different countries, depending on their needs, their manufacturing, whatever their economy is based on. And the list can change over time. It's not static. So if suddenly all these new discoveries are made, maybe it'll change what's on the list. Or if new technologies develop where a critical mineral is supplanted by something else, then it can change the list as well. And this is just an example of what I was talking about, critical minerals in various countries. And this is only a small subset of them. This is aluminum to cesium, so there's way more than that. But you can just see, I don't know if you can see my mouse or my cursor, but aluminum, it's important in Canada and the USA, and then you see it less important in the EU and Australia and Japan. And you can see going down the list, antimony, actually it's important in all of them, but it's very variable. So that's the key point I'm trying to make with this slide. Very variable. All right, here's kind of some of the history. So back in 2010, China restricted exports of rare earths. Prices increased, and they particularly restricted them to Japan, which was very critical for Japan because they're, you know, high-tech kind of manufacturing countries. So it really limited their ability to create or to build some of their devices, whatever it was in their sector. So as a result of this, US, Japan, and the European Union began to cooperate to protect supply chains and reduce the reliance on China, because China is a big supplier of many metals, many critical minerals. Back in 2018, and I think it was Trump who kind of pushed this forward, but the US published its list of 35 critical minerals. And as of last year, there was a new draft document which increased that number to 50 critical minerals. I think it's still in the discussion stage. Mostly they just split out the PGEs into the various PGE metals, as well as all the rare earths. They split it out to dysprosium and neodymium, and that sort of thing. So in early last year, Canada and US pledged to work together to build a supply chain to make them global leaders in the development of batteries for electric vehicles and energy storage. You see a lot of news articles about batteries, electric vehicles. It's kind of a, this kind of buzz in your ear all the time. And then at PDAC last year, Canada released its own list of 31 critical minerals. And then a few months later, Canada and the EU announced a strategic partnership around critical mineral supply chains. So when Canada developed its list of critical minerals, there was 3 criteria. And you'll probably remember seeing this diagram from Robin's talk. It's really pretty, but it's kind of hard to read, but it looks nice. Anyway, so the 3 criteria were essential to Canada's economic security, required for Canada's transition to a low carbon economy, and Canada is a sustainable source of critical minerals for our trading partners. Now, this last one is where kind of the US-Canada connection really comes into play. Whoa, there. And this is because Canada is a leading supplier to the US for 13 of their 35 critical minerals, so over a third of them. Things like cesium for drilling fluid, vanadium for batteries, uranium, we're a huge supplier of uranium for nuclear power, potash for agriculture, tungsten for cutting blades, and so on. Now back to the idea about China being a major supplier of many critical minerals. Again, this is just an excerpt of some of the critical minerals on the lists of various countries. And you can see aluminum, antimony, arsenic, barite, beryllium, bismuth, so forth, down to rare earth elements. This is the US line. They produce a lot of beryllium. But then you look at the China line, and they produce high quantities of all of these things. And this is the crux of the situation, that China is such a mega supplier of so many critical minerals. And it's frightening because, we don't know if they're just going to stop the supply. So China produced 54% of the global rare earth elements mined in 2021, and 85% of the refined rare earth supply. North America produced 18% of rare earth elements in last year, and 0 of the refined rare earths. So even though there's a mine in Mountain Pass in California in United States, they send their concentrate to China to be processed. Also, 90% of neodymium magnet manufacturing takes place in China. So, and that's just a small excerpt of some of the things that are produced in China. So here's Canada's critical minerals list. And you kind of think of it, oh, critical minerals. Yeah, I know what that is. But it's like, if I had the periodic table, you'd see it like all over the place. It's everything, or it just feels like it's everything. It's not, but it's a lot of different ones, and they're all in different geological settings, and they have different metallic associations. So it's not a cohesive group. And you can see even some of these, the platinum group metals, they are broken down into all of these, platinum, palladium, iridium, etc. And then the rare earth elements, the light rare earths and the heavy rare earths. So it's a lot. This is Canada's critical minerals list, but arranged kind of hierarchically in terms of what Yukon has. So we all know Yukon is well endowed with copper and zinc, as well as nickel, platinum group metals, cobalt, tin, tungsten, molybdenum. And then as you move down this list, we have less and less of it. We actually have defined resources for these top 4 rows, even though this 4th row, antimony, germanium, there's either just one deposit that has a defined resource, or else it's a historical resource, such as antimony. which is in the Wheaton Valley, the Becker-Cochrane. And then moving down, yeah, we have chromium, but we don't have any defined resources for these. And then it becomes rarer and rarer as we go down the list. Our government put out the Our Clean Future document. Critical minerals underpin the transition to a green economy and low carbon future. So this document, Yukon's Our Clean Future strategy, aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, ensure we have access to affordable and reliable renewable energy, and build a green economy. So one of the goals is by 2030, greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, heating, etc., will be 45% lower than they were in 2010. Does not include mining emissions. So maybe it's doable. I mean, we're going to have to deal with a lot of the transportation emissions. So electric vehicles, our grid is at capacity, so our electrical grid. So we'll see what actually happens. So some of the projects that you might have seen in the last 10 years are building of more solar panels. There was that project in Old Crow recently, and there's a fair number of critical minerals in solar panels. So things like copper and indium, molybdenum, tellurium, aluminum, etc., as well as a lot of non-critical minerals. So these need to be mined. So there's going to be a greater need for mining to build solar panels. Electric vehicles. We all know that we're moving to more electric vehicles away from internal combustion engines. You can see in 2010, there were 20,000 electric vehicles on the road. And in 2020, that ballooned up to 6.8 million, and that curve is just going upward. So Canada and US have agreed to build an electric vehicle supply chain. And this graph is interesting because it shows conventional cars, which have copper and manganese. And then you looked at just above it, the graph, the electric car graph, and electric vehicles need 2.5 times as much copper, twice as much manganese, lithium, whole bunch of nickel, cobalt, lots of graphite, and rare earths. So these vehicles are going to need metals. Now I'm going to talk about some of the endowment in the Yukon for various critical minerals. Copper, we all know Yukon has a lot of copper. The symbols, the rust-colored symbols on this map are occurrences as well as deposits with defined resources. So the larger symbols are defined resources. So we have porphyry deposits in the Dawson Range, Minto Mine, Casino, Carmex Copper, Nucleus Revenue, and lots of potential in this area. And as well, we have copper deposits in the Finlayson Lake District, mostly VMS deposits, Kudzakaya project that Robin was talking about, the Ice, Fire Lake, as well as others. Zinc, we also have a lot of zinc and historically have produced a lot of zinc. We have sedimentary exhalative deposits, the McMillan Pass, SEDEX property, Selwyn, just to the southeast, Faro, and then there's numerous other ones scattered. We also have Mississippi Valley type deposits, particularly kind of at the bottom boundary of the Peel watershed. So the Blend, Valvira, Mel, Mel's actually down here, but Gods. And then the VMS deposits in the Finlayson Lake District, Kudzakaya as well. Looking at southwest Yukon, we have this Kluane Ultramafic Belt. It's prospective for nickel, PGE, copper, and cobalt. There's a well-known nickel show, nickel, copper, cobalt, PGE deposit, plus gold. And that has been just trucking along. As well as to the northwest is the Canalask nickel deposit. It's a historical resource, so it most likely has some of these other metals associated with it. But Just needs a bit more exploration. And then there's potential along this belt as well. We have significant deposits of tungsten, the Mac Tung deposit up near the NWC border, log tongue and bulk tonnage, tungsten moly porphyry. So those are the purple ones. We have deposits of molybdenum. Casino has a fair amount of molybdenum. As well, Red Mountain, it's moly primary deposit. That's the pink. And deposits of tin. We're not as well endowed in tin. These are the turquoise symbols here. So Silver Range and the JC. I included this slide because I wanted to show that Canada is endowed in critical minerals right across the board. So the blue dots are advanced projects, the green squares are mines, and the red triangles are smelters. So right across the nation, we've got pretty much everything. Well, maybe not everything, but we have a lot. You know, nickel, potash, moly, aluminum. Well, aluminum because a lot of bauxite is shipped to Canada for processing because they have cheap hydroelectric power, relatively cheap. I mentioned rare earth elements earlier in this talk. Demand for rare earths is going to increase because of our use of smart TVs, cell phones, fiber optics, as well as motors in electric vehicles that use neodymium and dysprosium. 12% of the world's rare earth elements resources are actually located in Canada, so we're poised to become a supplier of rare earths if we can get those deposits online and producing. And you can see global mine production is increasing. So the demand is there and it's thought that it will just keep increasing. Here's another slide that shows global production of rare earth oxides. And you can see that this red at the bottom of the graph is China, which has dominated for a very long time. But in the last several years, some of other countries have been stepping in to fill the gap. So even though it was 54% production by China in 2020, I can see this possibly reducing with other countries stepping in to produce rare earths. Now, some initiatives in terms of rare earths and batteries. So I didn't know this, but Canada opened its first or its only rare earth mine last year, Nechalacho in the Northwest Territories. And I believe it will be shipping its concentrate to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan anyway. There's a rare earth element processing facility being built in Saskatoon. This is the rare earth mine I mentioned earlier. It reopened in 2017. It's in Mountain Pass, California. And on the battery side, 2 large-scale EV battery manufacturing plants are to be built in Quebec, as well as a critical battery minerals center of excellence somewhere, I'm assuming in Ottawa. I couldn't find exactly, but at Natural Resources Canada. So things are afoot. So this is the publication that the Yukon Geological Survey was working on and released a couple months ago. It's available in hard copy from us and online at data.geology.gov.yk.ca. The report has kind of a big preamble section explaining why it's organized the way it is, as well as these data sheets that are kind of tabular, and they talk about the 31 critical minerals, their uses, production, supply, demand, recycling, geological setting, Yukon prospectivity. So if you do get your hands on this and you have any questions or concerns or challenges or ways to make it better, just get a hold of us. We'd appreciate, because I'm sure there's going to be another iteration of this probably in a year or so. So what are the next steps? Do we think about incentivizing exploration for critical minerals in Yukon, either through another module in the Yukon Mineral Exploration Program or some separate program? Do we develop a GIS inventory of critical minerals in Yukon, including digitizing historical data, so that we have a kind of consolidated area where you can go just for critical minerals? Should we be coordinating more with other jurisdictions, including joint research projects to increase our understanding? Do we look at developing a Yukon critical mineral strategy or action plan? These are just some questions. I don't know what the answers are to them, but it's points to ponder. And that's all I have. Thank you for listening. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Laura. Very comprehensive overview, and it's really good to see that the Yukon should be playing a major role in the supply of critical minerals going forward. There's certainly enough potential for that to take place. So I think that's definitely going to be happening. So thanks. That was super interesting, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so next up is Cameron Bell, consulting geologist for Nickel Creek. And he's going to talk about the Nickel Shore project, which is particularly interesting in a number of respects, one of which for me is the range of critical minerals that it contains. So it's actually quite a handy little deposit in that respect, and it's potentially going forward a very, very major play. So Cameron's going to take us through the Nickel Shore project, as I said, give us an exploration update and give us a sense also of how things are likely to unfold going forward. Okay, Cameron, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Warwick. Good morning, everybody. I'll start my presentation next. Good morning. So thanks, Warwick. My name is Cam Bell, and I'm a consulting geologist for Nickel Creek Platinum. Today, I'll be reviewing the 2021 exploration program on the Nickel Shore project. So in 2021, our work focused outside of the Well-Green deposit and followed up on historic surveys and some time domain EM completed by Nickel Creek in 2020. So the presentation is going to cover project history, a review of the Well-Green deposit resource, the 2021 exploration program, and our exploration plans for 2022. So project history. So the Well-Green deposit was discovered by prospectors in 1952. Between the 50s to 73, Hudson Yukon completed just over 25,000 meters of surface and underground drilling, as well as 4,000 meters of underground development. The high-grade zones on the project went into production between 1972 and 1973, producing 171,000 tons at 2.2% nickel, along with significant copper and PGs. Between 87 and 88, there was exploration work by the Klawani joint venture, who drilled over 16,000 meters of surface and underground drilling, along with mapping, trenching, and some geophysics. Between 96 and 2005, Northern Platinum drilled over 4,000 meters, and between 2006 and 2010, Coronation drilled over 7,000 meters. Between 2011 and 2017, Nickel Creek Platinum and predecessor companies carried out approximately 30,000 meters of drilling. In 2018, the current 43-101 resource estimate was released, along with some mini plant metallurgical test work. And in 2019 and 2020, we carried out ground-based EM surveys over most of the property. And in 2021, we drilled the Arch and Burwash targets and also completed some carbon sequestration studies on the Well-Green deposit. Actually, I should say that those studies aren't completed. They're still in progress on the carbon sequestration. So just summarizing the Well-Green resource, the deposit contains indicated resource of 232 million tons, grading 0.26% nickel, along with significant copper and PG credits. Approximately 55% of the contained value is in nickel, with 45% in copper, PGs, and cobalt. There's also an inferred resource of 108 million tons, grading 0.29% nickel. So next steps in the deposit, we're reviewing options for pre-feasibility completion. And this will require some additional geotechnical drilling to characterize the stability of the pit walls and some minor infill drilling to upgrade the entire pit to measured and indicated category. As well, we need to complete some additional engineering studies. Okay, so this is a overview of the project on a photo base. And you can see the well-green deposit located here. And you can see our geophysical survey lines here at Arch, and then in the Burwash area and the Quill area here. The areas we drilled in 2021 are located here at Arch, and then over here at Burwash in these two areas here. The extent of the ultramafic unit is shown on this slide as well here, and then another sill over in the Arch area. So the host ultramafic intrusions are sill-like bodies varying in composition from proxenite to peridotite to dunite, and there are thin phases of gabbro along the margins of the intrusions, and these are often associated with the higher grade mineralization. The intrusions have been dated at 232 million years and are related to the upper Triassic Nicolai basalts of Wrangellia terrain. Now we'll quickly look at project access. So the project is located within the Quaney First Nation traditional territory. Burwash Landing is located just off the slide, about 25 kilometers from the project. You can see the Alaska Highway here in the Shackwalk Valley. And our lower camp facility is located here, where we carried out core logging and had a field office set up there. And this is the 14-kilometer access road that goes between the lower camp and the well-green deposit located here. And the Burwash target is in the Linda Creek Valley here. And then the area we drilled at Arch is located here. And there's an extension of this access road that goes right up the Arch Valley to within 500 meters of where we drilled in 2021. So the program included 12 diamond drill holes totaling 1,257 meters. We drilled 9 holes at Arch and 3 holes at Burwash. We carried out borehole EM on 4 holes at Arch, along with 3 lines of surface EM. And we also conducted some field checking of key conductors from the 2020 time domain EM survey. Just to show some shots of the drill. This was a Discovery 2 multi-power rig operated by Superior Diamond Drilling. And on the left, you can see the rig set up at Arch, and on the right, in the Burwash area. So we did have some good success at Arch. This is a shot of some of the massive sulfide in hole number 4. And I'll show you the results in table form and on sections shortly. Now we're looking at hole number 3, and you can see some of the massive sulfide here, and you can see there's some clasts of footwall material mixed in with the semi-massive and massive sulfide. Now we're looking at some of the massive sulfide in hole number 8. And now you can start to see visible pentlandite here. The brighter grains are pentlandite set in a mostly a brownish pyrrhotite. And the pentlandite rims clasts. It also forms loops around, zones of pyrrhotite. And you can also see some streams that are parallel to the fabric of the massive sulfide, where you get aligned series of pentlandite grains. Now in hole 5, we're looking at some more copper-rich material compared to the other slides. Okay, so this table shows the results of the higher grade intervals from the 2021 program. So these are not all massive sulfide. They're a combination of disseminated and massive sulfide. Nickel values range from 1.2 0.22 to 3.85% nickel, ranging over intervals from 1 to 4.3 meters. The intervals have significant concentrations of copper, cobalt, and PGEs. In the massive sulfide, the precious metals range up to 4 grams per ton. Sulfur levels show the mineralization has high nickel tenor with values in 100% sulfide ranging from 5 to 13%. And you should note that all the intervals are downhole and may not represent true widths. Okay, now we're looking at the high grade combined with the disseminated intervals. You note we now have significant widths of mineralization, including 1.4% nickel over 12 meters and 0.8 nickel over 24 meters. All the holes report significant PGEs up to 2.5 grams per ton. And you should note the nickel and sulfur grades here are significantly higher than the average grades from the deposit, which are 0.26 nickel and 0.77 sulfur. Okay, this is a slide showing the geology plan in the Arch area. You can see the pads we drilled from, pad 1 and pad 2 here. Some historic holes in black, the historic drill trails here, and then our surface EM lines here, here, and here, as well as the surface EM loop here. In black here, we see this represents a zone of intermittent mineralization at the base of the sill. And then this is the dominantly peridotite sill shown here. I should note that in hole 4 over here, there was a historic intersection that graded 2% nickel and 4% copper over 1 meter. Okay, so still in plan view here. Now we're zooming in on the 2021 area of drilling, and you can see the hole traces here. And basically, we are added the borehole EM conductive plates, I should say, here, and the plate from the surface conductivity located here. So you can see there is some room to expand the zone of high grade, both down dip and along strike. Okay, so now we're looking in cross-sectional view to the west, and you can see the surface EM plate here and the borehole EM plates located here. There's also a deeper target under pad 2, which may be at the base of the sill. The sill seems to steepen as it goes to the west, so we don't have enough holes to say this for certain, but we'll hopefully be able to add more information in this coming field season. And again, there is room to extend the zone down dip and down plunge. Now we're looking in longitudinal view, and again, you can see the plates from the geophysics here, and then the deeper plate underneath pad 2. Okay, now same view with the high grade intervals added onto the section, and you can see there was some, quite significant zones of nickel over 2 meters here, 3.7%. 2.6% nickel over 4 meters in hole 3 here, and 3.9% nickel over almost 3.5 meters located here. So as I mentioned, we did some geophysics in 2021. We utilized a 30 hertz frequency instead of the 5 hertz frequency that was used in 2019. We feel this gave us superior conductivity discrimination. The boreholes were surveyed in PVC lined holes or in open holes. This allowed us to do all the borehole EM in one shot, with the contractor just being at site for a few days. So logistically, this helped us a lot, lining the holes, and we would definitely plan to do this again in future. The high-grade mineralization is open down plunge and down dip. The westernmost EM line does not have an interpreted plate underneath it, but it does not cut off the conductivity. It just had a difficult to interpret conductive response. And ongoing borehole AM will be done on the deeper holes that we drill, generally in excess of 100 meters. And we also plan to continue to expand the 30 hertz survey along strike. Got another shot of the Arch 1 drill pad, and you can see some of the drilling muds we made extensive use of, and they were definitely key to getting decent core recoveries and keeping circulation. This is an overhead shot from the helicopter of the Arch 2 drill pad set up on a historic drill trail. So just to summarize the Arch drilling, we completed 9 holes, including 2 longer holes that were drilled as EM platforms. We intersected zones of massive and semi-massive sulfide in 6 of the holes with downhole widths up to 3.5 meters. Semi-massive and massive sulfide intersections are overlain by significant disseminated sulfide hosted in peridotite, and these are up to 17 meters thick. The Arch sill is underexplored and has potential for high-grade mineralization. There are significant combined widths of disseminated to massive sulfide up to 24 meters. And these zones are at superior grades to what we see in the deposit. And the dip of the Arch sill and local topography should allow for relatively shallow holes to test the sill down dip and down plunge. So I'll quickly summarize the Burwash drilling. We had much more difficult drilling conditions there. We hit a lot of fault gouge with some massive clay zones, which pinched the rods and hampered circulation. We mitigated this by extensive use of drilling mud and dry springs at the base of the core tube. Future drilling in this area, we would start with HQ. We started with NQ, and in hindsight, that was a mistake. The holes targeted time domain EM conductors O, P, and I from the 2020 survey, along with zones of disseminated sulfide outlined by historic trenching and drilling. There was no massive sulfide intersected in the drilling. We did hit some extensive low-grade mineralization, which has grades below the deposit, and also with low sulfur, which indicates a lot of the nickel is tied up in silicate. In hole 10, we hit 80 meters of approximately 0.2% nickel and 0.2% sulfur, again indicating a significant amount of non-recoverable nickel here. Surface mapping showed the presence of sheared peridotite in the Burwash area with narrow zones of sulfide. Potential remains at Burwash, but there's no obvious high-grade target, and the low-grade mineralization looks less attractive than what we see at the well-grade deposit. As a longer-term initiative, we would recommend repeating some of the time domain EM we completed at Burwash using the 30 hertz frequency, which should give us better conductor discrimination. So now this is a map of the West Burwash area with the one of the drill holes we used to test target I here. This is probably at the base of one of the intrusions, and they're just juxtaposed due to some faulting. And you can see there are some showings in the area, the upper showing here and the lower showing here that were defined historically. This is further to the east in the area we call East Burwash, and you can see the 2 areas we drilled in 2021. This hole was testing the extension of conductivity at target O and P, and then this hole was testing some historic mineralization intersected in a single borehole and in some trenches in the area. Core photograph of the Burwash area, you can see it's pretty ugly rock, very highly broken up, and this is what caused us great difficulty with our drilling. So you can see a lot of rubble and clay in this, and this is pretty typical of what we had to drill through. So now just getting back to the Arch area, in longitudinal view, you can see where we plan to test in 2022. Some of the drilling will be from the existing pads, and we will likely set up another drill pad further to the west. In all, about 1,500 meters of drilling is recommended. So in 2022, our goals are to outline the extent of mineralization with further drilling, complete borehole EM on any of the deeper holes below 100 meters in length, extend a 30 hertz time domain EM along strike, and basically just to collect data to determine if Arch can support early production. Just wanted to thank our exploration team. I'm not going to read out all the names, along with our suppliers. And thank you for your attention. And you can see any further information you're looking for on our Nickel Creek Platinum website. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I will be available for questions at the end of the session.
Thank you, Cam. Thanks, Cam. That was very, very interesting. I thought it was particularly interesting to see that almost half of the value at Nickel Shore resides in metals other than nickel, which, as Robin pointed out earlier, is a good hedge against price fluctuation. So it makes it a really potentially a good, stable project. So next up is Jack Milton, Chief Geo with Fireweed Zinc. And he is going to take us through the rather impressive boulder zone, boundary zone, sorry, at the McMillan Pass project. So the floor is yours, Jack.
Thanks, Warwick. Yeah, so we're going to go through that geology focusing on boundary zone. But first, I'd like to acknowledge that the McMillan Pass project is located on the traditional territories of the Ross River Daniel Council, the Liard First Nation, and the First Nation of Nachunayak. And I will be making some forward-looking statements during this presentation. So to give you some context, Fireweed is located in Yukon within the Selwyn Basin. And the Selwyn Basin is one of the most prolific zinc basins on Earth. It's split into 3 major districts, each hosted in different age Paleozoic rocks. We're at the McMillan Pass district, or Mac Pass, where there's zinc, lead, silver deposits hosted in barite and barite shales in mid to late Devonian rocks, including Tom and Jason, which are by themselves some of the largest undeveloped zinc deposits worldwide. And that is owned by Fireweed Zinc, by us. But in addition, in the Selwyn Basin, there's the Ferro Mining District, which at the time was the world's largest open pit zinc mine, hosted by slightly older rocks, by Cambrian rocks. We don't own that. And neither do we own the Howards Pass District, which is where there's some very large zinc deposits hosted in very late Ordovician and early Silurian host rocks. So to kind of set the scene, and as we heard from Lara, Yukon has a lot of zinc. So here we are at the Mac Pass project. The project itself is almost 1,000 square kilometers of claims. And we sort of started out in 2017 with Tom and Jason, put out a resource update in 2018, and shortly after followed that up with the PEA. And these form our current technical reports and resources. So at Tom and Jason, between the two of them, we have 11 million tons of indicated and 39.5 million tons of inferred, both at about zinc, 10% zinc equivalent. And these produced some good economics in a PEA, IRR of 24% and a discounted NPV after tax of nearly 450 million Canadian, which is greater than the capex of about 400 million Canadian for an 18-year mine life using 32 of those million tons. However, this presentation is not going to be on that at all. It's going to be on boundary zone. And boundary zone is located about 17 kilometers northwest from the Jason deposit. And I'm going to focus on the geology of that. But this PEA that we put out in 2018, this established a base case for the project. And since then, there's been multiple milestones that we think will lead to adding more NPV to the project in the end. And these are additional funding that's allocated to the Canal Road. So Canal Road or Canal Highway runs from Ross River up to our project, and actually runs right between the Tom and Jason deposits, right up to our camp. And the government has committed some money to improve that road, which is going to reduce the upfront capex in the project that we had already accounted for in our study. There's also lots of engineering optimizations in the mine design at Tom and Jason, which we think can be optimized. And there's a lot of resource expansion at Tom and Jason from drilling since 2018 that's not captured in current resources. And boundary zone in purple there, this is what this presentation will focus on. And we have no current mineral resource at boundary zone. So at some point, we'll be looking at putting out an inaugural resource and integrate that more broadly into the mine plan. So we think that that has the potential to really sort of shift down and change gears on the project and move the needle on the economics. We also think that there's very good exploration potential throughout the rest of the project, and I'll touch on some of that a little later in the presentation. So boundary zone itself was discovered originally by Cominco in the early 80s. And they drilled several holes, a few holes at Boundary Main and several more regionally. And at Boundary Main intersected some good intersections of over a couple hundred meters of sort of 2 to 2.5% zinc. We picked this up from Teck in 2018, who are now a shareholder. And we drilled the first holes there in 2019 and got considerably higher grades than we anticipated. And this led us in 2020 to do a ground gravity survey over the boundary area, which is that purple box that you can see on the figure. And that revealed a huge gravity anomaly, which is contoured there on the figure as those colored lines. And that gravity high extended sort of a little to the east and almost a kilometer to the west of the main area of drilling. And the historic drill holes were kind of clustered around the periphery of that gravity high. So we saw this huge gravity high, which we thought was a long strike from the area where we thought there could be massive sulfide and barite, and we drilled a discovery hole there in 2020. And we'll show some pictures of that later. But overall, the size of this gravity anomaly, you can see it's about 1.5 kilometers long. It's over 1 kilometer wide. It suggests that there's a massive system here, which has barely been drilled. And even if the grades were as low as what Cominco found, sort of 2 to 2.5% zinc, the metal endowment could be staggering, but we know that this is not the case. There are some really quite spectacular high-grade zones within that as well. So a close-up on the boundary area and a very schematic structural map here showing the Hess fault, which is a major crustal structure, and it's certainly a sedimentary feature, sedimentary fault. And we see splays, these F1 and F2 different fault splays coming off the Hess fault around which boundary zone is focused. We're going to talk about two different cross sections here, A to A prime and B to B prime. The A to A prime section is focused on boundary main, where those drill holes are clustered, and B to B prime is focused on boundary west, which is our new discovery. So at boundary zone, there is mineralization hosted in sedimentary rocks, also in volcaniclastic rocks. So on this figure here, the volcanics are in green, and these are folded and faulted into a sequence across which there's extensive vein mineralization. On that section, we're just showing holes that Fireweed have drilled in 2019, 2020, and then last year in 2021. And some of the highlights here I'll just run through. Hole 2 in 2019 intersected a true width of 230 meters of 4.1% zinc from surface. And that included almost 8% zinc over a true width of 100 meters from surface, with about 6.5 meters of 42.5% zinc in a high-grade zone that occurs in the hanging wall of that fault in the center of the section there. In addition, we followed that up with some other holes with over a couple of 100 meters of between sort of 3.5 and 4.5% zinc. And in particular, we drilled hole 2 from 2020 in the down dip direction. And this confirmed that the veins that we see are not sheeted veins with a preferred orientation. They are a stockwork-like nature, and that we are getting good grades. That hole returned 213 meters of 4.4% zinc from about 50 meters down the hole. And then last year in 2021, we stepped back, extended the mineralization down dip in hole 5, intersected good zinc mineralization over 200 meters, including some higher grade zones. But at first for the project, we intersected some copper mineralization, 1.5% copper and 5.4% zinc over 2 meters high in the hole near surface. It's the first discovery of copper mineralization at economic grades at boundary zone, and is perhaps a hint that we're getting towards a hotter part of the system, closer to the source of the fluids. We think that there's large size potential at boundary main. The true thickness ranges between about 2 to 250 meters. And we've confirmed the extent of the mineralized zone down dip at least 250 meters. In the hole that we drilled down dip, we had to terminate the hole due to drilling difficulties. We were still in mineralization. We would have kept going otherwise. So it's open at depth. And in general, we see higher grades concentrated near surface. So what does this stuff look like? As I said, it's predominantly vein mineralization. This is sort of these stockwork veins, these vein breccias and thick banded veins. And in the coarse clastic rocks, these mafic volcaniclastics and chert bubble conglomerates, we see flooding with sphalerite and galena. Mostly sphalerite. Galena is less prevalent at boundary main. It's that sort of brick red color sphalerite, and we see this paragenesis of this early red-brown sphalerite grading into this lighter sort of beige to tan colored sphalerite. This is very different to the styles of mineralization at Tom and Jason. Tom and Jason are the deposit type formerly known as SEDEX. We now refer to them as shale-hosted zinc or sediment-hosted massive sulfides because of their formation in the subsurface rather than by exhalative activity on the seafloor. But those are sort of type deposits for this Selwyn Basin style sediment-hosted zinc. And there, the mineralization is very fine-grained and it occurs in laminated rocks. This is very different at boundary zone. It's very coarse-grained sphalerite occurring mostly in veins at boundary main. So now we'll turn to boundary west. So this was on the western side of that map that I showed on cross-section B to B prime here. And this is the new discovery that we're very excited to talk about. So in 2020, we drilled the discovery hole right here through boundary west, and through the red section here is massive sulfide. So discovery hole was 24-25 meters of 6.5% zinc, 0.7% lead, and 47 grams of silver. And that was massive sulfide, pyrite with sphalerite, and a little bit of galena. That massive sulfide lens we've now traced down dip with drilling this year in holes 1 and hole 2. And the grades are increasing as you go from surface down dip. So up at surface here, we've got 43 meters of about 4.7% zinc. As you go down dip, this increases 24 meters of 6.5% zinc. Here, 46 meters of 7.7% zinc. and down here, 60 meters of 8% zinc, including 40 meters of 10% zinc, with just under 1% lead and a couple of ounces of silver. In addition to the zinc and lead grades increasing with depth, the amount of copper in the rock increases to not to economic levels, but becomes more geochemically anomalous at depth. And all these things are pointing towards a source at depth and getting closer to a feeder structure as we target those deeper intersections. So next year, or this year rather, we would like to follow these up with additional intersections targeting where we think even higher grades may be found. In addition to the massive sulfides at Boundary West that we discovered, we also hit some stratiform laminated mineralization similar in style to that seen at Tom and Jason. And that's represented by the purple body on this cross section. This was a completely brand new zone discovered last year in 2021. Very high grades in this zone, 10.4 meters of 23.7% zinc with 3.5% lead and 75 grams of silver. And these kind of grades and textures would not be out of place on the margins of deposits like Tom West and Tom East in the very high grade feeder proximal areas. So we could be just on the edge of another Tom or Jason style of deposit at Boundary West, in addition to the massive sulfides and the volcanic hosted, volcanics are green on this section again, mineralization. And on the top right here, you can see some barite rosettes. These are partially replaced by pyrite, and in the bottom image, completely replaced by pyrite. And sometimes this is pyrite, sometimes it's sphalerite or pyrite sphalerite that is replacing these barite rosettes. In this case, in the massive sulfide, this was originally bedded barite that has been completely replaced by sulfide. This is what it looks like. That was the discovery intersection, 26 meters massive sulfide. Very, very neat rock to see coming out of the ground. Very exciting to see. And so I'm told an intersection like this would not look out of place on the table in the core shack at Red Dog. It's massive sulfide, mostly pyrite, with significant amounts of sphalerite, this brick red mineral you can see on this piece of core. And these are some photos of that laminated style of mineralization that we intersected in the purple zone on this section. And we also found that style of mineralization at the top of the massive sulfide lens in some of the holes we drilled in 2020 and in 2021. And generally where you see these, the grades spike and you get very high grades of zinc accompanied by lead and silver. So we have that style mineralization. We have flooding of the volcanics in green here. Similar in style to Boundary Main. And we intersected another kind of mineralization in the hole from 2020, a bit deeper down from about 200 meters or so. We intersected what we're terming Howard's Pass style mineralization. And we're terming it that because we intersected graptolites in the core that brackets the mineralized interval perfectly and nail the age to being latest Ordovician to earliest Silurian, which is, when you compare those ages to the age of the stratigraphy at Howard's Pass, is bang on the same age. So this is really significant for us because this age of mineralization had not been recognized before at Mac Pass. If you remember, there's Faro, there's Howard's Pass, there's Mac Pass, all occurring in different age Paleozoic rocks, Cambrian, late Ordovician, early Silurian, and then late Devonian. So this was the first discovery of stratiform zinc mineralization in Howard's Pass age rocks at McMillan Pass. And we have lots of targets all around the property where we have geochemically anomalous levels of zinc in soils, etc., in drainages that are draining these kind of stratigraphy. So it's very exciting to see. And this was underlain by about 200 meters of vein-style mineralization of about 2% zinc. This is what that Howard's Pass mineralization looks like. It's a steely gray sphalerite occurring in a dark gray to black cherty mudstone. This kind of thing would be very easy to walk over in the field and not think anything of it. It's occurring as these spherical grains of sphalerite, which I believe are replacing radiolaria in these cherty mudstones. It's also cut by these thin quartz veins, which is very locally remobilizing the sphalerite to this straw-colored sphalerite as these little syntaxial veins. And this is some examples of the vein mineralization that we see at Boundary West. Some are very high-grade veins, sphalerite and pyrite veins. Some pyrite veins cut by sphalerite pyrite veins, and we also see siderite in a lot of those veins too. Also very similar to the Boundary Main. And here's a few more examples of what that looks like. Galena does occur in the veins, but it's less common. They're dominated by this paragenesis of early red-brown sphalerite to late tan sphalerite, and they can in places be quite sheared up. So to summarize all that, what we think that we're looking at Boundary Zone is an initial phase of mineralization that's hosted in Ordovician to Silurian rocks that may occur in the early Silurian, or may possibly be the same event as the stratiform zinc mineralization that's being developed in the late Devonian rocks, all as replacement at different levels in the stratigraphy in reactive host rocks. So barite and volcaniclastic rocks are favored. And then later on, we get some highly localized remobilization of that zinc in those quartz veins. And then the vein mineralization, I believe to be an influx of additional zinc into the system, bringing in sphalerite veins and brecciation. And I think a lot of those red colored sphalerite veins are occurring much later. They're certainly post-Devonian and possibly as late as Cretaceous, but highly uncertain on what the timing on that is. So in summary, we've got these early formed structures that have influenced the mineralization, where fluids are coming up and reacting with favored lithologies, barite and volcaniclastics. We're seeing multiple pulses of mineralization at Boundary Zone, so it's a very long-lived hydrothermal system with overprinting episodes, likely due to a large time-integrated fluid flux. And the fault system points to a deep architecture and a crustal scale plumbing system. So these are all ingredients that I think make Boundary Zone very favorable and have high potential for forming a very large deposit. So a quick comparison with Red Dog. We think this is a good analogy for the geology and for use in exploration going forward. Red Dog, this is a section from the Anorak deposit. We see massive sulfide replacement of barite underlain by this vein ore. And these are some examples of what that looks like. Very similar, even down to the textures and paragenesis that you see at Red Dog. And also interesting to note, the original discovery at Red Dog was made in this vein ore. And it wasn't until they drilled it over the next few years they discovered massive sulfides. And we have that same exploration history of Boundary Zone. The vein ore was discovered first, and we have now discovered massive sulfides in the system. So how big could it be? We've not defined any mineral resources at Boundary Zone yet. This section is showing zinc assays and drill holes that are over 4%. And at Boundary Main and Boundary West, where we have those clusters of drill holes, the dimensions of the targets are over a couple of hundred meters in each dimension, although we have not estimated a thickness at Boundary West. It's a little more tricky. And these appear to be loci or centers within a larger hydrothermal system that's over 1.5 kilometers wide. It's almost 1 kilometer long. And even on the edges, the fringes of this system, way away from Boundary Zone, we're still getting good grades at 2.7% zinc over almost 50 meters and 6% zinc over 8.8 meters. So we think there's potential here to form a very large system. So for 2021, we still have results from 2 drill holes to come from boundary zone. We did a large ground gravity survey in the Kobuk area, which is a few kilometers away from boundary. We found a large gravity high there and followed that up immediately with a big soil grid. But the results from those gravity and soil surveys are currently pending. So watch this space for news on that. And thanks everyone for listening. And back to you, Warwick.
Thank you, Jack. Some very, very, very impressive numbers there. This thing can only grow and become super huge. That's for sure. Okay, so if we could have all our speakers back, we will start with the Q&A session. So first of all, questions, please just put them in the chat. I've got a whole lot of questions going around in my head here, so I'll actually kick off the whole process. And then, as I said, put them in the chat, and then we'll just keep an eye on them as they come up. So I think what I'll do is I'll ask. I've got, as I said, I had so many questions I had to write them down. So otherwise I would have forgotten. But what I'll do is I'll ask questions in the order of the speakers, and so we'll start off with Robin. The question I was wondering while you were talking is, I would imagine there must be 3 concentrate streams coming out of Kudzakaya, a copper, lead, and the zinc. And where would be, because you mentioned the precious metals concentrate. So where are the precious metals, into which concentrate are the precious metals heading off into?
So we have 3 concentrates: copper, zinc, and what we term as a high precious metals concentrate. There is a significant portion of lead there, but through our work, the majority of the silver is reporting to that high precious metals concentrate. There's also a bit of zonation in the deposit where we, in the early years, are finding quite a bit of silver associated with the copper mineralization up closer to surface. So the character of the concentrates, as tested and modeled, do change a little bit over the life of mine. The precious metals, though, as I said, silver is reporting to that high precious.
Sorry. Robin, can you hear me? Can you put on your video there, please? Thank you. People would very much like to see you. There you go.
There we go. All right.
Okay.
Shy, what can I say? I noticed I went mute there. So can you just let me know what you caught of that explanation?
We caught everything except the last probably 10 seconds.
Okay. So yeah. So there is a significant amount of silver reporting to the zinc concentrate. And as I said early in the mine life, there is precious metals reporting to the copper con. But over sort of the life of mine, the high precious metals concentrate takes the majority of the silver.
Okay, and then you get obviously credits for all of the precious metals, I presume, eh?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So next up is Laura. I've got I'm not sure it's a good question or a bad question, but it's basically with rare earth elements, Laura. If one of the things about rare earths is they're not exactly rare, and this is a bit of a misnomer to call them rare. So how have the Chinese managed to corner the market in rare earths? Is it because they have better geology, or because they have cheaper labor costs, or what, in your view, is the reason for that?
I think that they're well endowed with rare earths, and they've just made it a priority to supply them. And they have cheaper labor costs, and they have Crown Corporation mining companies. So, I mean, they're just a powerful nation. They can do what they want. Yeah.
So in part, it's a strategy as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the States, they had that Mountain Pass rare earth deposit, and for a number, it stopped operating for a number of years, and then started operation again in 2017 when they were all of a sudden like, shoot, we need this, even if it's going to cost more, it's strategic. So we need to it's critical. We need to develop it. And then finally, the Nechalacho mine in Northwest Territories. I don't really know the economics of it, but there's definitely been a push in Canada and the US to secure these resources elsewhere.
And in the Northwest Territories, the rare earths occur in what rock type?
I think it's some sort of pegmatite, like spodumene. I don't exactly know, but it's like a pegmatite, like granitic. It's not an easily mineable. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Okay. Thanks, Laura. So now on to Cam. I've got a couple of questions here. I'll just ask. One of them, which I was thinking about while you were talking, was given the focus on sort of clean technologies and so on, and the fact that your deposit is a range of critical minerals sitting in ultramafic rocks, do you think you would be able to, from a mining point of view, have a sort of carbon neutral mine? Is that a possibility? And have you looked into that?
Yes, we are currently looking into this work. So that I mentioned this carbon sequestration work we're doing. So that's basically looking for minerals such as brucite in the ultramafics that have the ability to take up carbon. And we've done some testing in conjunction with the University of British Columbia, and this work is in progress. And I'll actually be heading out to Vancouver at the end of this month to get an update on that work. So we do see some early positive indications, but we've got more work to do. But it's definitely a possibility that we will maybe not be carbon neutral, but certainly be able to offset a lot of the carbon from production.
Because I would imagine from a permitting point of view, that would be a complete game changer, given that you happen to be sitting in an ultramafic complex. So it'll be really good. Okay, and then Jack, a couple of questions for you here. I was looking at the boulder at the boundary zone last night, and it was I was struggling to get my mind around it because potentially it's so huge, potentially low grade, but not necessarily, as you say. From a resource estimate point of view, is that some way off?
I think you're right that the size potential there is significant, and the grades are not going to be the same as what we see at Tom and Jason, but certainly in some areas they will be. In some areas they'll exceed that, and some areas will be significantly below. However, it's near surface, and it being sort of a larger target would lend itself well to open pit mining. We have no mine plan there, as we don't have a resource yet. But yes, we would anticipate drilling further this summer so that we can fully encapsulate the rest of the target. We think that we haven't drilled it off completely yet. And we would anticipate looking at doing a resource once that drilling is complete.
Okay, and that as you say, that could potentially be a game changer. And the mineralization at boundary, is it effectively blind? I mean, do you walk over and see it on the ground, or is it covered by regolith or whatever?
Good question. So at boundary zone itself, there's almost 10 meters of cover, which ranges from a combination of colluvial cover and tills. And so there's no outcrop on boundary zone itself, but Caminco did trench it in the 80s and dug out some sort of big boulders out of this cover material that were mineralized. But so in that sense, yes, it is blind. It's covered by quaternary sediment. But the soil geochemistry is very interesting. There's no zinc anomaly, not a strong zinc anomaly over boundary zone. And part of that is due to the slightly acidic groundwater. And so in Boundary Creek, there is a small zinc showing, but that would be outside of the areas of Boundary Main and Boundary West. And Boundary West was completely blind discovery that we made on the back of a combination of geology and geophysics and gravity.
Okay. Cool. Interesting. Okay, thanks for that. I'm just going to, there's a question popped up, a couple of questions. I'll get to them in just a sec. I just want to direct Cam's attention to something in the chat from Lindsay. I'm not sure if you've seen that, Cam, about speaking to Dr. Arshad Ali of Sultan Qaboos University in Muscat about some carbon sequestration work. So there's a comment in there for your attention. Okay, so now, all right, so there's a question here to Cameron Bell as follows from Peter Bittenbender. You mentioned the massive sulfides at the base of the peridotite sill. Do you model this as a conduit hosted system? And do you see evidence of multiple episodes of magma influx, etc., associated with the conduit model?
Okay, so right now, we don't see a feeder to the arch sill, if this is what the question was directing us towards. It's probably a shallow embayment at the base of the arch sill. There may be a conduit related to it somewhere in the system, but I don't think we're immediately adjacent to it. We do see, because of the brecciation, that kind of thing, it looks like there have been more than one episode of massive mineralization. But it's early days so far, and we do see some variation in the nickel copper ratios, for example. And I think we'll understand the system better when we get some more drill holes into it. And sorry, the other part of the question.
Let's see. So conduit host system, and do you see evidence of multiple episodes of magma influx, etc.?
Yeah, so I can't say that I've seen a direct example of cross-cutting relationships in the massive sulfide, but again, there's very few holes, but I suspect that we will see some evidence of that as we go forward.
Okay, thanks, Cam. So question here from Adam Coulter to Jack, and the question is, how do the muon tomography results look at boundary compared to Tom and Jason?
Okay, yeah, thanks for the question, Adam. So muon topography is a survey, downhole survey, brand new kind of survey that we tried this year. And unfortunately, due to the drilling conditions that we experienced at both at Tom East and Boundary, we were not able to deploy the detectors down the holes this year, or last year rather, because of collapses in the holes and some faults and things that we went through. So we were not able to deploy, so we don't have any results on that, so I can't comment on that just yet. But we're excited to deploy again this year with a different strategy to drill some PQ holes and deploy inside those rods to prevent any issues with hole instability.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions, just pop them in either the Q&A or the chat, and I'll pick up on them. So Laura, let's ask you a question quickly. If you were entering the Yukon for the first time as far as critical minerals are concerned, what, not the main ones, but the sort of those middle ranking ones that you had of critical minerals, what sort of critical minerals do you focus on, which you think actually have potentials? Because everybody knows copper this and zinc that, but how about some kind of new ones, new kind of different out the box things?
Well, I mean, I know there's been a little bit of exploration for cobalt up in the, the inliers north of Dawson in the Wernicke breccia. I don't know. Trying to think of something. Antimony.
For all our listeners here, they're thinking they need some new ideas to get in there. Antimony is one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's just that Becker Cochrane in the Wheaton Valley that's a historical resource on it.
Scott says tungsten, which is also a smart one.
Yeah, but I mean, we have all these known tungsten deposits, and they're just not, viable right now. Are we going to get people to explore for tungsten? I don't think that that's going to be a hugely appealing idea, since there's all these known deposits that are, just sitting there. Vanadium, I guess, because there's been a little bit of vanadium exploration up in, the Canal formation up the Dempster. So that's kind of an interesting one. Yeah, sure. Vanadium.
All right, sounds good. Cam, I've got another question for you. Is in terms of metal prices, how close is Nickel Creek to being economic, do you think? I mean, nickel's gone up a lot, platinum's gone down a bit. Where do you think you're currently sitting in terms of sort of price regime?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask this question to, but certainly with the latest nickel prices, the project is going to be coming closer to being economic. And if it's really, if we hit $12 nickel in the future per pound, I'm quite certain the project will have very robust economics.
Okay.
But at current prices, I think we have a good chance of making it, and that's why we're going to collect more information so we can eventually, complete a pre-feasibility study.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I think from my side, those are all the kind of main questions I wanted to ask. If there are any other questions from the audience, please ask them now. Otherwise, I think we'll probably, we don't want to carry on and just hold the floor if there's no more questions. So if there's no more questions, I think we can start to wrap up proceedings. Last chance for questions. All right. Wait. Oh, back to you, Brianne. There you go. Brianne, sorry.
Thank you, Warwick. And again, thank you to all our speakers today, Robin Black, Jack Milton, Laura Lewis. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us for the speaker series. Again, bid now and bid often on our online auction. And as well, all of these sessions will be recorded and posted on our yukongeoscience.ca website. Please join us on Thursday, January 20th for session 4, talks from YGS, Strategic Metals, Western Copper and Gold Corp, and a couple more. Again, thank you to our sponsors. We have Banyan Gold, Casino, CSR, Evor, Horizon Helicopters, Minto Metals, Rockhaven, SLR, Snowline Gold Corp, and a few more. Again, we would not be able to put this speaker series on without you and YGS, our partners, along with BMC Minerals. Thank you very much.